Imagine you're walking through a minefield. Every word you say, every decision you make could set everything off. And the worst part is, you have no idea who planted those mines. Until one day, you realize, it's her words. The phrases she throws at you with apparent calm, but that are designed to destroy you little by little. They tell you that men your age should have their lives figured out by now, right? But no one teaches you how to deal with those phrases that seem harmless, but eat away at you like a slow poison. No one warns you that some words aren't just casual comments. They're threats disguised as affection, manipulations meant to make you doubt yourself. Today, I'm going to show you the 7 most destructive phrases a woman can say to you. And if any of them sound familiar, believe me, it's time to walk away before they consume you completely. Stay until the end, because the last of these phrases is the one that has destroyed more men than they even realize. I'm Celia, and I'm here to open your eyes. Have you ever stopped to think about what it really means when a woman tells you, you're not the man you used to be? It's a phrase that sounds innocent, even nostalgic if you let yourself be fooled. But behind those words lies a direct hit to your identity, to your dignity as a man. Because it's not just a comment about your physique or your energy. It's a judgment on everything you are. It's as if you suddenly have to justify your own existence, as if everything you've built is somehow not enough. Imagine a man named Richard. His whole life, he worked hard to provide for his family. He built a home, broke his back at a job he hated, but that gave his wife and kids the stability they needed. Now, after all those years, he finds himself in retirement, but the peace he expected never came. Because now, every time he argues with his wife, she throws that phrase at him like a dagger. You're not the man you used to be. As if, at some point, he lost his worth. As if his only purpose was to keep providing, to keep meeting expectations that were never really his. And you know what the saddest part is? Richard starts to believe her. He starts to think that somehow he's lost something essential, that maybe his worth as a man has faded with age, with retirement, with years he can never get back. Those words become a constant echo in his mind, and that's how the real destruction begins. Not because someone else attacks him, but because he becomes his own worst enemy. But you know what? This isn't an isolated case. This kind of emotional manipulation happens every day in thousands of homes. It might have even happened to you, or could be happening right now. Because that phrase, disguised as concern or reproach, isn't meant to help you improve. It's meant to make you doubt yourself, to bring you to your knees so you become dependent on the approval of someone who doesn't deserve to have that power over you. And why do they do it? Because they know that if you start to question yourself, if you let those words take root in your mind, it will be easier to manipulate you. Easier to make you feel like you have to prove something, that you need to reclaim some supposed lost greatness. And all the while, she enjoys the control she has over you, the power to mold your identity to her convenience. Let me tell you something you need to hear, even if it hurts. Your worth isn't measured by anyone's approval, not even by the woman who sleeps next to you. Your worth lies in who you are, not in what someone else decides you should be. Because when someone tells you that you're not the man you used to be, what they're really saying is, you can't be controlled the same way anymore, so I need to make you feel weak so you'll be manageable again. And this is just the beginning, because if you think this is harsh, wait until you hear what's next. The next phrase I'm about to reveal, one you've probably heard without even realizing its true poison, holds a destructive power that very few men manage to recognize in time. Hearing that you're not the man you used to be can leave you shaken. But the worst part isn't the phrase itself. It's what happens afterward, when you start giving up ground without even realizing it. Because right when you're at your most vulnerable, when doubt has already been planted in your mind, the next attack comes. We've reached the second key point of this video, and it's one that holds incredibly destructive power if you don't learn to recognize it. If you loved me, you would do this for me. That phrase, so simple and yet so full of poison, is the oldest emotional blackmail trick in the book. And yet, it still works, because it hits your weakest points, the desire to be a decent man, to fulfill your responsibilities, to prove that you're worthy of being loved. But here's the trap. Genuine love should never demand anything in return. True love respects your essence, your freedom, and your dignity. If someone needs to blackmail you to get their way, it's not love. It's manipulation. The ancient Stoics understood something most modern men have forgotten. They said nothing and no one should have power over your mind, because the only thing you truly control is how you respond to what happens. You can't control what others say or do, but you can choose how you react. And the phrase, "If you loved me, you would do this for me," is a brutal attempt to emotionally control you, to make you feel like your love is worthless unless you give in to their demands. Think about it. How many times have you heard that disguised demand? Maybe when they ask you for money you don't have. Maybe when they pressure you to sacrifice your peace for their problems. Or even when they push you to change something essential about yourself just to satisfy their whims. And if you refuse, you're accused of being selfish, of not loving them enough, of being a cruel, cold man. But that's a dirty game, a psychological trick designed to disarm you and make you feel guilty for not being what they expect. And this is where your emotional strength comes into play. Because when you allow yourself to be manipulated that way, you give up your own power. You surrender your will, your desires, and your needs in the name of a love that, if it were genuine, would never put you in that position. Epictetus said that no man is free unless he is master of himself. And every time you give in to that kind of emotional blackmail, you become a slave to someone else's expectations. Richard learned this the hard way. After years of sacrifice, he believed that fulfilling every demand his wife made was the ultimate proof of his love. "If you loved me, you would do this for me," she repeated every time he hesitated. And he, like so many other men, ended up becoming a shadow of himself. He gave up his peace, his independence, his own dreams, all in the name of a love that was nothing more than an abusive emotional contract. But let me tell you something important. No one has the right to ask you to betray yourself to prove your affection. True love never comes with humiliating conditions. It never asks you to give up your dignity or your peace of mind. Genuine love is built on freedom, not emotional dependency. If someone tells you that you need to prove your love by doing something that goes against your principles, all they're really revealing is their own inability to love authentically. Because someone who truly loves you doesn't pressure you, doesn't manipulate you, doesn't make their love conditional. Someone who truly loves you respects you as you are, with your boundaries and your decisions intact. If you've ever heard that phrase and felt obligated to do what they ask just to avoid conflict or to prove your love, it's time to open your eyes. Because every time you give in, you hand more power to that manipulation. You hand over the keys to your life to someone who doesn't know how to value you. So far, we've talked about how words can be used as weapons to manipulate you, to make you feel less than you are, or to make you believe you have to prove your love over and over again. But we're not done, because emotional manipulation isn't always as obvious as it seems. We've reached the third point of this video, and this is where things start to change. Because when a woman tells you, "You make me feel unhappy," she's playing a dangerous card that can destroy you from the inside if you don't understand its true purpose. When someone accuses you of being the cause of their unhappiness, what they're really doing is throwing a burden on you that was never yours to carry. It's like they hand you a backpack full of stones and expect you to drag it uphill while they sit back and watch. But there's something even more insidious about this phrase, because by blaming you for their unhappiness, what they're truly trying to do is manipulate you into feeling responsible for fixing their life. It's a trick that plays on your guilt, your desire to protect, your urge to solve problems that were never yours to solve in the first place. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic teachers, said it's not external events that affect us, but our interpretation of them. And here's the key. When you allow someone else to control your peace of mind by blaming you for their problems, you're giving up your most essential power. the power to decide how to respond to life. Because if you accept the blame they impose on you, you end up believing you have to do something to compensate for that discomfort, to prove that you're enough, and that's the trap. The practical strategy I want to give you here is simple but powerful. You need to learn to distinguish between genuine responsibility and the emotional burden others try to place on you. When someone says, "You make me feel unhappy," instead of reacting with desperation or guilt, take a moment and ask yourself, is this really my problem? Have I objectively done something harmful, or are they just using my actions as an excuse to avoid facing their own emptiness? Think about Edward, a man who spent years dealing with a wife who constantly tells him he's the reason for her unhappiness. No matter what he does, he always seems to be the one to blame. If he's late, it's his fault. If he doesn't spend enough time with her, it's his fault. Even if he's exhausted after a grueling day, she accuses him of being cold and insensitive. For years, Edward tried to change, to adjust to her demands, to give in during every argument just to avoid conflict. But all he accomplished was losing himself in the process. It wasn't until Edward realized something crucial. His wife's happiness didn't depend on him. Her frustration, her bitterness, her constant dissatisfaction were not his responsibility. So he stopped carrying that weight that was never his to bear. He started saying no when something was unfair. And when she would say, "You make me feel unhappy," he calmly replied, "That's something you need to work on. I have my own path to follow." And at that moment, he reclaimed his inner peace. Because understanding this isn't about being selfish or insensitive. It's about recognizing that everyone is responsible for their own happiness. And no matter how hard you try, if the other person doesn't want to face their own demons, they will always blame you for their misery. Learning to say, "This isn't mine," is one of the most powerful acts of self-love you can ever practice. But before we continue, I want to ask you something. If what you've heard so far has resonated with you, if something I've said has opened your eyes, then subscribe right now and leave me a like so this message can reach more men who need it. Also, let me know from which country you're watching and tell me in the comments if you've ever been blamed for someone else's unhappiness. Because you're not alone in this. So far, we've explored how certain phrases can bury you in guilt, manipulation, and despair. Every one of those words has been thrown at you with a clear purpose, to break you from within. But nothing prepares you for the most brutal blow of all. We've reached the fourth point of this video, and here's where the attack becomes direct, with no disguises, no pretense. Because when someone tells you, you're worthless, they're trying to rip away the last shred of dignity you have left. That phrase isn't just an insult, it's a sentence, a condemnation designed to dig deep into your mind and stay there like a parasite feeding on your insecurities. Because, as cruel as it sounds, the truth is most men who face that kind of attack have already been weakened by years of emotional manipulation. It's not something that happens overnight. It's a slow, calculated process where every criticism, every put-down, every sarcastic comment gradually wears away your self-esteem until you're so vulnerable you actually start to believe you're worthless. Do you know why this phrase is so effective? Because it attacks your most fundamental identity, the one you've built through years of effort, sacrifice, and achievements. Because whether you admit it or not, you've spent your entire life defining yourself by what you're capable of doing. By your work, your ability to protect and provide, your strength to face every challenge that comes your way. But when someone who's supposed to support and respect you tells you you're worthless, that entire identity crumbles. Because at the end of the day, what hurts the most isn't the phrase itself, it's hearing it from someone you trusted. And that's the mental trap so many men fall into. Instead of looking at the situation objectively, they end up believing the problem is within them, that they've truly lost their worth. What they don't understand is that this criticism doesn't reflect their true essence, but rather the frustration, insecurity, and need for control of the person saying it. Because no one who truly respects and cares for you would ever launch such a low blow. Let me tell you about Luis, a man who spent over 30 years building a business from scratch, a man who worked long hours, giving up his own dreams to ensure his family had everything they needed. But when his health started to fail and he had to delegate some responsibilities, his wife began throwing those words at him with ruthless coldness. "You're worthless." As if all those years of sacrifice meant nothing, as if everything he'd built was absolutely worthless. The problem with phrases like this is that they hit you where it hurts most. At first, Luis tried to ignore it, thinking it was just something said in moments of anger. But over time, that idea began to rot away in his mind. Because when you hear something enough, when you're told a lie over and over again, you eventually accept it as truth. Luis sank into depression. He abandoned his projects. He convinced himself that he really was worthless. And that's exactly what people who use that phrase as a weapon are trying to achieve, to destroy you from the inside so you never get back up. But here's the truth you need to understand. A man's worth is not defined by anyone else's opinion. If you allow someone else's words to become the measure of your value, then you're already defeated. Because nothing and no one can take away what you've built throughout your life. Because even if your circumstances change, even if you're no longer the physically strong or financially powerful man you once were, your essence remains intact. Real strength isn't in what you own or what you achieve, but in what you can endure and overcome. If someone has told you that you're worthless, remember that those words only have power if you give it to them. Someone else's opinion is not the absolute truth. In fact, most of the time, it's just a reflection of their own insecurity. But here's what matters. It's not about ignoring those words. It's about understanding why they're said and deciding they have no power to define you. Now I want you to think about this. How many times have you allowed those words to stay with you longer than they should have? How many times have you let others determine your worth, as if your existence needed to be validated by someone else? That ends now, because if you keep accepting those criticisms as something valid, the only thing you'll accomplish is destroying yourself without even realizing it. You've heard words designed to hurt you, to break you from the deepest parts of your soul. You've endured phrases that cut like knives into your dignity. But the worst part isn't the direct insult or the unfair accusation. It's something far more subtle, far colder. We've reached the 5th point of this video, and this is where the attack becomes truly devastating. Because when she says, "Do whatever you want, I don't care," she's playing a card that can destroy you from within if you don't understand its real purpose. You might think that phrase doesn't carry the same weight as an open insult or a brutal accusation, but in reality, it's one of the most destructive attacks a man can face. Because what it conveys isn't just indifference, it's absolute contempt. It's as if, suddenly, your opinions, your decisions, your very presence no longer matter, as if you were a ghost in your own home. And believe me, few things destroy a man's self-esteem as much as feeling like you're irrelevant. When someone tells you, "Do whatever you want, I don't care," what they're really saying is that your existence is meaningless to them. That it doesn't matter if you stay or leave, if you breathe or bend over backward to make them happy. It's a devastating message because it strikes directly at your sense of belonging, your need to be seen, heard, and valued. And when you're made to feel invisible, you start acting like you are. You accept that nothing you do matters. You resign yourself to a secondary role in your own life. Let me put it bluntly. When you accept indifference as part of your relationship, you are condemning yourself to a miserable existence. Because indifference is not the opposite of love. Hatred, at least, acknowledges your existence. Indifference, on the other hand, erases you completely. It's like someone has decided you are no longer worthy of being considered, respected, or even noticed. And when you resign yourself to living like that, you become a man dead inside. But here's the truth no one wants to tell you. Indifference is a manipulation tactic just as powerful as any insult or emotional blackmail. Because when someone makes you feel like nothing you do matters, you start doubting your own worth. You start trying even harder, doing things you should never do just to receive even a tiny bit of approval. It's a trap, a game you will always lose because the prize never comes. Now I want you to think about this. How many times have you tried to win back the attention of someone who chose to ignore you? How many times have you exhausted yourself trying to prove your worth to someone who has already decided you're nothing? That's the mistake that destroys so many men, because instead of recognizing that the problem isn't with them, they convince themselves they have to do more, give more, sacrifice more. But the truth is that no amount of effort will ever be enough if the other person has already decided you're invisible. How do you break this pattern? It all starts with the brutal acceptance that you should never have to prove your worth to anyone. If someone chooses to treat you with indifference, with contempt, the answer is not to beg for attention or exhaust yourself trying to please them. The answer is to reclaim your own power, to realize that your worth does not depend on anyone else's validation. And that means adopting a mindset that few men are willing to embrace, emotional self-sufficiency. It means understanding that you decide who has the power to affect you, who has the right to make you doubt yourself. And if someone cannot see you, cannot appreciate you for who you are, then that's their problem, not yours, because you cannot change the perception of someone who has decided to ignore you. The only way to reverse this situation is to abandon the need for external approval. It's understanding that your inner peace must not depend on anyone else, because as long as you allow someone to play with your emotions through indifference, you will remain a slave to their contempt. The next time someone tells you, "Do whatever you want, I don't care," instead of feeling devastated, understand that what they're really saying is, "I've given up on respecting you." And if someone doesn't respect you, they don't deserve anything from you. You need to have the courage to walk away, to close that door with the certainty that your worth does not depend on the attention of someone who won't even give you a shred of consideration. Because as long as you keep looking for answers where there's nothing but indifference, you will keep destroying yourself. Make no mistake, this is not the end of the road, it's just the beginning of your liberation. Because what comes next will reveal the very root of why you've allowed so much pain, so much humiliation, so much exhaustion. Have you seen how indifference can eat you up from the inside? How contempt disguised as silence is a weapon that makes you invisible, even to your own eyes. But it doesn't end there. Because even if you endure that emptiness, even if you convince yourself that you can live under that indifference without breaking, something comes along to destroy what little remains of your dignity. We've reached the 6th point of this video, and it's the phrase that sentences your essence as a man. You'll never change. Imagine this. You wake up one day, and when you look in the mirror, you barely recognize the man you once were. The one who once had dreams, clear goals, and the strength to face any challenge. But now, all that's left is a blurry reflection of what was once your identity. Because when someone constantly tells you that you'll never change, that you'll always be the same failure, the same walking mistake, you end up believing it. And the worst part is, you don't even realize when that process of self-destruction began. You'll never change. That phrase that's driven into your mind like a rusty nail. Because it's not just a judgment, it's a sentence. It's the way someone else tells you there's no hope for you, that any attempt to improve, to grow, to reclaim your power is destined to fail. And when you accept that idea as truth, you become your own enemy. Because instead of fighting to change, you resign yourself to being what others have decided you are. And that, my friend, is the biggest mistake you can make. The real problem with that phrase is that it's designed to nullify your ability to evolve. Because if you believe you'll never change, then why even try? Why make the effort to improve, to reclaim your life, to find a purpose that brings you peace? They cut your wings before you even try to fly. Because a man convinced he can't change is a man who has already been defeated. I want you to imagine a chain running from your heart to the hand of the person who tells you that you'll never change. every time you give in to that phrase, the chain tightens a little more. Every time you convince yourself they're right, the chain is reinforced with a new link. And every time you decide to do nothing, it becomes even stronger. Until one day, you realize that chain is no longer something external. It has become part of you. Do you know what's worse? That this trap doesn't just come from your partner. It can also come from your children, your friends, your own thoughts contaminated by that lie. Because when you accept the idea that you can't change, that you will always be the same, you lock yourself in a cage that you built yourself. And if you don't break that chain now, you may never do it. The only way to escape that prison is to prove to yourself that they're wrong. But you don't do it for them, you do it for yourself. Because your evolution, your improvement, your transformation doesn't need validation from anyone. It's something you do because you understand that the only way to reclaim your dignity is by proving you have the power to change, to rebuild yourself from the ashes if necessary. Think about all those men who gave up, who accepted the lie that they couldn't change, who spent their last years submerged in despair, convinced that their lives no longer had meaning. You don't want to be one of them. You can't allow yourself to be one of them. Because if you give up now, if you allow that phrase to become your reality, you will have lost the last battle that truly matters, the one you fight against yourself. Change is possible, but it won't happen as long as you keep accepting the labels others have placed on you, because true power lies in your ability to challenge those words and prove that you have control over your life. Because change begins when you decide that no one, absolutely no one, has the right to tell you who you are or who you can become. If you've made it this far, it's because deep down you know you can break that chain, that you can prove to yourself that change is not only possible, but necessary. Because if you don't take action now, you will be condemned to repeat that cycle of self-destruction until your very last days. You've seen how each of these phrases has been designed to destroy you from within, how manipulation, indifference, contempt, and guilt combine to turn you into a defeated man, stripped of your own will. But none of that compares to what's coming now. Because we've reached the 7th point of this video, the final blow, the last phrase that reveals just how far you're willing to betray yourself out of fear. If you leave, you'll lose everything. These words are not just a threat. They are a psychological shackle that ties you to a state of emotional dependency. Because when someone tells you that you'll lose everything if you walk away, what they're really doing is trying to subdue you through fear. And fear, when not confronted, becomes your worst jailer. Picture this, a life where every step you take is conditioned by the fear of losing something that, in reality, you already lost a long time ago. Because if a woman throws that threat at you, it means the relationship is already broken. That all that's left is fear, insecurity, and the desperation of someone who wants to keep you under control, no matter how much you suffer in the process. And do you know what's most painful? That many men accept that threat without questioning it, because they believe that by leaving, they will lose their stability, their family, their future. But they don't realize that by staying, they are losing something far more valuable, themselves. Because living in fear is not living. It's existing in a constant state of paralysis, anguish, and submission. Let me tell you something with brutal honesty. If someone tells you that you'll lose everything by walking away, the only thing you're really losing is the chance to reclaim your dignity. Because what's already rotten will not heal no matter how much you sacrifice, because if someone needs to keep you chained with threats, then they do not deserve a place in your life. It's time for you to face that reality, to understand that true power lies in your ability to let go of what's destroying you, because as long as you remain bound to that fear, you will continue to be a prisoner of a life that doesn't belong to you. And the worst part is, you don't realize that by staying, you are giving up your freedom, your inner peace, the possibility of building something better. Real change begins when you decide that no one, absolutely no one, has the right to manipulate you with threats disguised as love. because a man who respects himself does not allow fear to dictate his path, because a man who understands his own worth knows that his dignity is above anything he could lose. Ask yourself right now, how much longer are you going to allow fear to control your life? How many opportunities are you going to let slip away just because you're afraid of losing something that, in reality, is already gone? Because if you think staying in that situation will bring you peace, you're lying to yourself. Peace is not begged for. Peace is conquered. And the only way to do that is by confronting your fear and taking control of your own existence. Everything we've discussed so far means nothing if you don't do something about it, because you can hear all the truths you want, but nothing will change if you remain in the same place, bound by the same chains, subjected to the same fear. It's time for you to make a decision, to stop being a passive spectator of your own life and become the man you need to be. The power has always been in your hands, but you will only reclaim it if you decide to break away from everything that is destroying you. Because what you lose by leaving is nothing compared to what you'll gain: your freedom, your dignity, and the ability to be happy without depending on anyone. The question you need to ask yourself now is simple, but brutally honest. Are you going to keep letting others decide your life for you? Or are you going to stand up and take control before it's too late? Because, my friend, no one is going to rescue you from this situation. No one is going to give you your peace back if you don't decide to fight for it. This is what no one dares to tell you, that the decision has always been yours. That all you need to reclaim your power is the courage to break free from fear and walk away from what's destroying you. Now tell me, are you going to keep waiting for things to change on their own? Or are you going to make the only decision that truly matters? Because time doesn't forgive. And every day you let pass is another day you give up on being who you are truly meant to be. If you've made it this far, it means you have something most men lost a long time ago: the courage to face the truth, even when it hurts. Because what you just heard is not a message to comfort you, nor an attempt to make you feel better. It's a brutal and necessary call for you to wake up before it's too late. Because no one else is going to save you. No one else is going to restore your peace if you keep allowing others to control you with manipulation, indifference, or threats. The only person responsible for changing your life is you. And no, it's not going to be easy. Breaking the chains that keep you subdued never is. Because the fear they've imposed on you is not going to magically disappear. You're going to have to face it, challenge it, and shatter it with every action you take. But let me tell you something. If you've made it this far, then you already have what it takes to start reclaiming your dignity. Because only a determined man can endure hearing these truths without giving up. Now I want you to prove to me that you're ready to take that step. Write this phrase in the comments. I take control of my life. It's that simple. I want you to write it and tell me which country you're watching from. Because if you can say those words out loud and accept them as a declaration of war against everything that's been destroying you, then you've already taken the first step toward freedom. I'm Celia, and this is House of Wisdom. This channel exists to remind you that you still have power, that no one has the right to steal your peace, your dignity, or your freedom to be who you truly are. Because here, we don't speak to comfort you, we speak to wake you up, to shake you until you realize that the life you deserve is not going to come on its own. You have to fight for it. If this message resonated with you, subscribe right now. Be part of this community of men who refuse to be subdued. Share this video, because out there is someone who needs to hear this as much as you do. Someone who is on the edge of despair because they believe there's no way out. Help them wake up. And don't leave yet, because this topic doesn't end here. On the screen, you'll see 2 videos you should watch right now. Both contain the tools you need to keep moving forward on this path. Because if you've made it this far, then you already know there's no turning back. This is the moment to stand up and take control of your life. Are you willing to do it? The decision is yours.